there is a quiet tragedy happening in modern life, and almost no one talks about it. It happens in offices, at parties, inside relationships, inside families. A person can be surrounded by people every day and still live as if they were never truly there. Not because they are hated, not because they are untalented, not because they are unworthy, but because they built their life on a dangerous belief that if they were valuable enough, someone would notice. So they stay patient, polite, respectful, unintrusive. They wait to be invited into conversations, wait to be chosen for opportunities, wait for someone to ask how they feel, wait for love to recognize their loyalty, wait for the world to reward what they quietly carry. And while they wait, louder people advance, bolder people become unforgettable, less capable people take the place they thought merit would earn. Because the modern world has a brutal rule. Human beings do not search for hidden value. They reward what presents itself. And every year, millions of people disappear from the lives they wanted to matter in. Not through failure, but through hesitation. They become the employee nobody fights to keep, the friend nobody calls first, the lover someone didn't realize was interested, the genius whose ideas die inside their own head. Not because life rejected them, because life never fully saw them. What most people call humility is often fear in a respectable outfit. Fear of being too much, fear of seeming desperate, fear of bothering people, fear of hearing no, fear of discovering that maybe they were never wanted in the first place. So instead of risking rejection, they choose invisibility. And they call it patience. They call it maturity. They call it being low maintenance. But there is nothing noble about slowly erasing yourself from your own life. Because the people history remembers, the people rooms revolve around, the people opportunities chase, there is a peculiar kind of loneliness that has nothing to do with being alone. It is the loneliness of being present, but never central. To sit in rooms where everyone knows your name, but no one truly knows your mind. To have friendships where you are appreciated, but rarely pursued. To work in places where your competence is relied upon, but your presence is never considered indispensable. You are included, but not remembered. Seen, but not chosen. Useful, but replaceable. And for many people, this becomes the defining pain of adulthood. Not dramatic rejection, not public humiliation, not catastrophic failure, just the quiet realization that life keeps moving around you, as if you were never meant to be one of its main characters. Most people assume invisibility happens because someone lacks talent, beauty, intelligence, or charisma. But that is rarely true. Some of the most forgotten people in the world are deeply gifted. They are thoughtful, observant, kind, competent, emotionally intelligent, yet they vanish socially, romantically, professionally, because they made one fatal mistake. They believed being valuable was enough. They assumed that if they worked hard enough, loved deeply enough, stayed loyal enough, waited patiently enough, someone would eventually recognize it. But recognition does not function like morality. The world does not scan every room. searching for the most deserving person. It notices what asserts itself. And so many people spend years confusing hidden worth with visible presence. They think, if I stay humble, people will respect me. If I keep proving myself quietly, someone will notice. If I care enough, they'll eventually choose me. If I remain patient, my time will come. But often, it never comes, because patience without presence is indistinguishable from absence. There is a man named Elias, 34 years old, bright, reliable, thoughtful, the kind of man people describe as a really good guy. He has ideas and meetings that could improve the entire project. But he waits. He tells himself he will speak when the timing is better, when the idea is more refined, when he is more certain. Then someone else says something half as useful, with twice the confidence, and they get the credit. He has feelings for a woman he has known for months. She laughs at his jokes, enjoys his company, seems comfortable around him. But he waits. He tells himself he doesn't want to make things awkward, doesn't want to pressure her, doesn't want to ruin the friendship. Then one day she tells him she met someone, and he smiles, nods, pretends to be happy for her, then goes home and tells himself the same lie he has told his entire life. They just never see the real me. But the truth is harsher than that. They cannot see what never fully presents itself. Elias has mistaken invisibility for virtue. He believes restraint makes him noble. But often, restraint is not wisdom. It is fear, wearing the mask of dignity. Because many quiet people are not silent. Because they are peaceful. They are silent. Because they are afraid. Afraid of interruption. Afraid of misreading the moment. Afraid of seeming arrogant. Afraid of being disliked. Afraid of taking up space. They do not feel entitled to occupy. So they shrink themselves into digestible versions. They soften their opinions, mute their desires, delay their invitations, swallow their confessions, hold back their intensity, and then wonder why no one feels their depth. But depth hidden beneath permanent restraint is indistinguishable from emptiness. To those outside of you, this is one of the cruelest laws of human perception. People cannot value what they never experience. No one can appreciate the joke you never told, the thought you never voiced, the affection you never expressed, the leadership you never demonstrated. Potential does not build reputation. Presence does. And over time, silence becomes self-erasure. Not dramatic, not immediate, slow. The friend group stops inviting you first because you never initiate. The workplace, there is a strange bias built into human psychology. One so automatic most people never notice it happening. We assume the person who moves first knows something we do not. The one who approaches first appears more confident. The one who speaks first appears more certain. The one who reaches out first appears more emotionally secure, even when none of that is true. Because human beings do not judge confidence by internal reality. They judge it by behavioral evidence. And initiative, more than almost any other behavior, signals belief. It communicates something primal to everyone watching. I believe I belong here. And people are drawn to those who appear convinced of their own place in the world, not because confidence is always real, but because visible certainty is interpreted as competence. This is how social gravity forms. There are two people at the same gathering. One waits by the edge of the room, pleasant, observant, intelligent, hoping someone will include them. The other walks directly toward strangers, extends a hand, asks questions, laughs loudly, moves without visible hesitation. By the end of the night, everyone remembers the second person, not because they were deeper, not because they were smarter, not because they were better, because they created interaction instead of waiting for it. And in human psychology, the person who creates momentum is often perceived as the person with value. This extends far beyond social settings. At work, the employee who asks for the meeting often appears more leadership-oriented than the one with better ideas. In dating, the person who expresses interest often appears more attractive than the one who waits to be pursued. In friendship, the person who initiates plans becomes the emotional center of the relationship, not necessarily because they deserve it more, but because initiative creates visibility, and visibility shapes perception. People do not simply judge who you are. They judge what your behavior implies about who you are. And hesitation speaks louder than most people realize. When you repeatedly wait, others unconsciously conclude, maybe you lack confidence. Maybe you are unsure of yourself. Maybe you do not feel entitled to be here. Maybe you are not as capable as someone who acts. Not because they think this consciously, but because behavior is symbolic. Humans are constantly interpreting micro-signals of status, certainty, and self-belief. And one of the strongest status signals is simple. Who moves first? Who asks first? Who speaks first? Who proposes first? Who reaches first? Who risks first? The initiator shapes the emotional frame of every interaction. They decide when the conversation begins. They decide what gets discussed. They decide what opportunities appear. They decide what relationships move forward. The passive person, meanwhile, becomes reactive, dependent, forced to live inside circumstances other people create. And then they wonder why their life feels controlled by external forces. But a life built on reaction can never feel sovereign, because if you only move when others invite movement, then others become the authors of your life. This is why two equally talented people can enter adulthood and end up with radically different destinies. One waits to be recognized. The other introduces themselves before they are ready. One waits until their work is undeniable. The other makes sure it is visible. One waits for romantic certainty. The other risks awkwardness to create possibility. And after 10 years, one believes life was unfair. The other appears lucky. But luck is often just visibility, misunderstood by the invisible. People call someone charismatic, when often they simply initiate more. People call someone naturally successful, when often they simply risk more. Most hesitation is not logic. It is not strategy. It is not patience. It is not wisdom. It is fear that has learned to sound reasonable. Because when people explain why they do not act, they rarely say, I am terrified. They say, I'm waiting for the right time. I don't want to force things. I'm just being careful. I don't want to come off desperate. I need more certainty first. But beneath nearly all chronic hesitation lies the same private terror, the fear of being unwelcome. To initiate is to expose yourself. To text first is to risk being ignored. To ask someone out is to risk visible rejection. To pitch the idea is to risk looking foolish. To request the promotion is to risk being told you are not enough. And for some people, that risk feels minor, embarrassing perhaps, uncomfortable certainly, but survivable. For others, it feels catastrophic because they do not experience rejection as a moment. They experience it as a verdict. Not that did not work, but this proves something is wrong with me. And once a person internalizes rejection as identity instead of circumstance, their entire life reorganizes around emotional self-protection. They stop taking visible risks unless success feels likely. They stop speaking unless their thought is polished. They stop expressing interest unless attraction feels guaranteed. They stop asking for more unless approval seems probable. They do not live for possibility. They live for damage control. This pattern often begins early. A child speaks excitedly and is mocked for being too much, expresses emotion and is told to calm down, asks for attention and is made to feel burdensome, shows vulnerability and is punished for it. Eventually, the nervous system learns. Visibility is dangerous. Need is embarrassing. Initiative invites pain. Exposure leads to humiliation. So the child adapts. They become agreeable, measured, low maintenance, emotionally self-contained. Adults later praise them for being mature. What they are often praising is trauma made socially convenient, because many easygoing adults are simply children who learned their needs were safest when hidden, and this creates a devastating illusion. The person believes they are choosing restraint, when in reality, they are obeying fear. They call themselves independent because they never ask. They call themselves patient because they never pursue. They call themselves humble because they never assert. They call themselves rational because they never risk. But the truth is darker. Many people have built entire identities around making sure they can never be openly rejected. And in doing so, they guarantee they will never be fully chosen either. Because the life built to avoid rejection is a life stripped of exposure. No humiliating losses, but no great victories either. No devastating heartbreak, because no terrifying confession was made. No public failure, because no meaningful risk was taken. The person remained safe, respectable, stable, and secretly miserable, because the human soul does not thrive on safety alone. It needs movement, risk, expansion, uncertainty, possibility. And when those things disappear, a person may remain protected, but they stop feeling alive. The most dangerous prison is not obvious suffering, It is comfortable stagnation, a life where nothing collapses, but nothing truly begins, where every day feels manageable, yet forgettable, where the person survives beautifully and dies internally by inches, because fear does not always ruin lives. Through catastrophe, sometimes it ruins them. Through moderation, through caution, the people who shape remarkable lives are not the ones who avoided rejection. They are the ones who stopped treating rejection like a death sentence. Because rejection, for most people, is not painful merely because it hurts. It is painful because of what they think it means. A delayed reply becomes, "I am forgettable." A failed interview becomes, "I was never impressive enough." An unanswered confession becomes, "No one could truly want me." A dismissed idea becomes, "I should have stayed quiet." The event itself lasts minutes, but the meaning assigned to it can shape decades. And this is where lives divide. Two people experience the exact same rejection. One shrinks, the other adapts. One interprets the no as condemnation. The other interprets it as information. One says, "This proves I am not enough." The other says, "Not here, not now, next." That single psychological distinction creates entirely different futures, because people who personalize rejection become smaller with every setback. They retreat, overanalyze, self-censor, withdraw, hesitate harder next time. Their world narrows with every disappointment. But people who depersonalize rejection become sharper. They learn, adjust, persist, reappear, move again. Their world expands with every attempt. This is the hidden advantage of those who seem fearless. They are not immune to embarrassment. They are not unbothered by failure. They are not naturally fearless. They simply learned that rejection is filtration, not final judgment. A closed door does not mean you are unworthy. It means wrong person, wrong room, wrong timing, wrong framing, wrong fit, wrong moment. Nothing more. But the insecure mind turns every external outcome into internal evidence. And because of that, many people destroy their future, trying to avoid temporary discomfort. They would rather live unseen than risk being seen and dismissed. Yet this creates the ultimate tragedy. To avoid being rejected by the world, they reject themselves first. They silence their own voice before anyone can interrupt it, dismiss their own desires before anyone can deny them, shrink their own ambitions before reality can challenge them, abandon themselves preemptively, and then call it realism. But extraordinary lives are never built by those who require certainty before movement. They are built by people willing to survive being misunderstood, unwanted, ignored, rejected, and continue anyway. Because every person you admire for their confidence now was once awkward. Every charismatic person was once uncertain. Every leader was once doubted. Every magnetic presence was once unimpressive. The difference is not that they were spared humiliation. The difference is, they kept moving long enough to outgrow it. Rejection did not stop them. It trained them. This is what Elias finally learns. Not in one dramatic moment, but slowly, painfully, he begins speaking. Before his thoughts feel perfect, he begins contributing. Before certainty arrives, he sends the text first, makes the invitation, asks the difficult question, risks the uncomfortable conversation. And at first, it is awkward. Some people do not respond. Some interactions fall flat. Some moments embarrass him. But then something strange happens. The world does not collapse. He survives. And because he survives, his fear weakens. Because fear survives only when never tested. Then gradually, people begin noticing him differently. His boss seeks his opinion. His friends rely on his initiative. Women sense confidence where they once sensed passivity. Rooms respond to the man who finally enters them fully. Not because he changed who he was, but because he stopped hiding it. And that may be the most painful truth of all. Life was never waiting for him to become more worthy. It was waiting for him to become visible. How many people die with talent still trapped inside them? Love never confessed. Ideas never spoken. Leadership never demonstrated. Potential never embodied. Not because they lacked greatness, but because they waited for permission. That was never coming, because no one arrives to crown the silent. No one appears to excavate hidden brilliance. No one interrupts your life to announce that you were always enough. The world is not cruel for this. It is simply indifferent to what remains concealed. And indifference is the tax paid by those who refuse to appear.